All right, Mike. So here is the modified shroud for the THB chamber. As you can see, we've changed out the uh, hinges here, going with the ones without the studs on the backside. The one with the studs on the backside, it's like an M5 screw, is what it shows on their spec sheet. But these are just the ones with the through holes. So a screw going through the backside, secured by hardware there, secured by hardware here. On the backside here, as far as the supports, we've got a vertical L bracket welded to the exterior there, and then a horizontal one welded here, and a horizontal one welded here. I think between all three of those, we should be good as far as support on the chamber here. The other items we have, so we've got, of course, our fan grills on both the top and the bottom down here. We've got this bracket that last time we talked about this, I mentioned it briefly because it's something that um, it can be secured to the chamber, and then this whole shroud can be kind of set on it down here at the bottom side to secure the rest of it. So that's one of Joel's original designs had that in there, and I've kept running with it. And then the last piece we had up here was this little wire way up top. I'm not sure if that worked well for y'all on the THP shroud before or not, but that was something that we put up there to run some wires and hide them. So that's the shroud. And I've got a model of it somewhere fitting on the back of the chamber, but everything lines up. But the main thing there being the new hinges and the new brackets welded to the backside here, which should stiffen that up plenty. Now, on the chamber wall side of things, I will walk through the assembly here, um, and we'll step through it there. This one's getting a little complicated just because I've got so many different variations of it. But the first step of the assembly is you have this driver wall insert. In fact, I'm going to walk you through that part first because this will be the first thing that's built up. It'll be built up on the table on its own. You have a driver plate here. Hide these two guys. There's your gasket or your 2-inch thick insulation, um, and your kind of sandwich plate here. And so what you have here on your backside is your driver plate. On your driver plate on this side, you've got your standoffs for your driver rack, same as before. IBE strip, standoffs for your feed through or your bus bar assembly, all that stuff. Your CDA ports going through. These are the new CDA connections, the larger IP. This right here is where the THB or where the thermal probe will go through. These holes right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, will be where heater strip lines come out through a little grommet. And so on this setup, what you're going to have is you're going to have this driver plate. You're going to put aluminum standoffs back here, which I believe are 2 inches long, 1.967. They're 2 inches long. In fact, if I measure from there to there, it'll be 2 inches. 2 inch long standoffs will put your CDA components through, and then your gasket, your 2 inch thick piece of insulation, will set right on top of there. And so you've got your individual standoffs that are going through that insulation. You've got some openings here in the insulation through which your heater strip wires will pass through, and then you've got this opening right here where the the humidity probe will pass through. You'll notice here it looks what appears to be an offset in the slots back here versus the slot in the insulation. I'll show you how that works. I'll actually slide a feed-through card in there for you. I was looking at that this morning. Then you've got this sandwich plate that goes on top of it. It has screws that go through this plate into those aluminum standoffs. Once again, pass-throughs for the wires for the heater strips are going to be on the bib side. Pass-through for the humidity probe, and this is the area where your feed-through card will pass through. CDA coming through this wall, all of that. So that's the really your driver wall insert, I think is what I've called that. And so that's its own little build-up on the table. Once that's built up on the table, then you'll frame it out in the G10 pieces that are really going to serve as the wall. So that'll fit right here around the insulation, right around your sandwich plate. The next step after that is you have some insulated standoffs made out of G10 or FR4s to be machined. They've got a specific depth to them that I think is around 1.5 inches, 2.15 inches, 2.115. And so you'll have those. That doesn't need to be in there yet. You'll have those that go into place, and these are basically what are going to serve as supports for the bib plate and the outside edges. So we've got a good number of them here, but that's because there's really nothing else supporting this bib plate when you're pressing against it, inserting a bib. And so all that happens there in that step, you've got these insulated standoffs that go on. The next step of the assembly is actually installing the bib plate. So this is our little hat section that inserts through the chamber wall and makes sure that this face right here is flush with the interior of the chamber wall. It's got these covers on it right here. Those are the covers that can be pulled off and access the heater strips behind. So that's another step in this setup here is this bib plate. In fact, I think it can be shown in the exploded view here. This bib plate on the back side is where you're putting your heater strips. So you got 3 6-inch heater strips on the top, middle, and on the bottom. They are positioned in between the insulated standoffs. So you have these standoffs here, and so there's space for the heater strips to fit in between those, specifically where they secure to the inside of the bib plate here. And so those go there. You've got a rubber grommet that goes in here for your humidity probe. You've got all these rubber grommets that are going back here for the heater strip lines coming through. This plate right here is going to secure to the back wall here. And then this is where the humidity probe will be attached, so your threaded piece will fit in that plate further on down the probe than what is modeled here, and then a nut on the back side so that you can control the depth of that probe. So reality is you'll kind of figure out the depth of the probe. You'll adjust this nut to the appropriate position, secure it to this plate, and then secure that plate to the back wall. So once this is no longer in its exploded view, what we can see is that here from the side, if I section it out, your humidity probe is sitting here in this CDA area. You'll notice a little circular cutout there. I'll explain that here in a little bit. You'll see that. And so that's that. That humidity probe is in our CDA area. CDA ports coming through. Right now, of course, these are all open because I don't have feed-through cards plugged in, but these 2 plates that can be removed to access the heater strips. The next step of the assembly is installing feed-through cards. And so they go through just like before, plates here on the back side, gasket around them. This gasket has been designed with a 0.03 inch slit cut in it to match the thickness of the water jet. That shows the plate on there. Of course, the nut would be further down. It's just not modeled out that way in this. So what I can do here, let me see if I can disengage one of the mates on this guy in order to show you how it's actually moving in and out of the slot. So I should be able to do this right here. Yeah. So I'm going to do a section view here from the top, and this will show the feed-through card path through the chamber wall. So we'll look at it here from the top. Okay, so in fact, let me take this section a little bit further down, right there. Okay. So this provides us with a view of the entire feed-through card insertion. So I'm gonna slide them all out, put them back in. It's a lot of files moving at the same time, so it'll be a little slow at times. But what we have here, and disregard those, that's the bottom layer of feed-through cards. And in fact, yeah, we'll just keep going here. And so here on the top side, you can see we're wide open here, going in, no interferences at all right now. Feed-through card just going through a big open slot in the wall. Then we get back here, and this is where our 2-inch thick piece of insulation is, and where I was talking about what appears to be an offset. The trick with going through this back wall and these plates is that your board is here, but the connectors here up on top. And so if you center the board in the slot, then the connector gets really close to the edge. And so what I did is I centered the connector here in the slot, which means the board is slightly offset to the side as far as how it passes through. And so this goes in. Once again, no interference. These plates aren't on the back side when you're plugging a feed-through card. These are things that are put on after the fact. And so the feed-through card goes through. You'll see here is where our feed-through card insulation starts to pass through the little driver insert. So this cover plate and the 2-inch thick insulation there. And so it slides in there. Once again, still feed-through card insulation connecting there. And you'll see once we get to the full insertion and it's back flush against your bib plate, then this extra piece of insulation butts up against this back, seals those areas off. So what I'll do is let me bring this mate back into existence, which butts it up against the wall, and then I will provide a section view this way. And so yeah, right here you can kind of see this is the insulation in the slot once it opens up around the rest of the feed-through card. And so right now we've got a small gap all the way around until you get to that next layer of insulation that plugs all that off. So all of a sudden, now your area is completely sealed off from the backside. And then you've got just board. And then right there, you see the heater strips pop up that are on the inside of the bib plate. And then you get to your bib plate and you seal off there. A couple other just little items here that we've kind of talked about before. There's no longer a gasket here on the backside because we want that thermal transfer to take place. This plate, everything's made out of that same 16 gauge, 0.06 inch thick stainless steel. And so that's that. Feed-through cards go through. You slide these gaskets over the top of the feed-through cards, secure the plates around them. But, these aren't symmetric plates. There's a right plate and a left plate. Beyond that, the next step is adding the insulation here along the edges. It's just a real thin piece of insulation as far as mounting to the back side of the chamber. One of those things that was kept thinner than we normally would so that the standard length feed-through card would work. Next step's installing your bus bars, top, bottom, and your IBE strip. You can reuse the existing buses. We'll have one extra long bus that we won't be using again. But you have 2 short power buses, a long power bus, and then your ground bus. So we'll be able to reuse all those, but new brackets going in and a new Lexan cover plate to better cover. So those are the brackets. Everything's the same. It's just a reverse orientation of it. But the length of the lines to your feed-through cards should match up with what's already out there based upon the current location. If anything, the ground lines might be slightly shorter based upon where they're located now. In fact, they are slightly shorter. But looking at the pictures and stuff, I think that's something that'll be easily be able to work around in the field. Next step, I believe, is racks going on. So you got your driver rack that secures to those studs before, same driver rack, no changes there. And your bib rack securing here, you'll see that this is outside of the edge there, so you get no interference problems there using the same bib rack. So the next little piece here, we'll see how this all builds out. This is where it starts getting a little more complicated. You'll notice here around all the edges, this is where the envelope is mounting. There's all these little extra PIM studs around there. So the envelope should come in here, but my bib rack, my bib rack's in a hidden position right now, which is fine. And so the hood goes on here, secures here. Both this hood and this bib plate here, I've called out in the drawings to run a bead weld in there on each one to just completely seal these off. So this is what that hood looks like. It is 1 inch deep. These PIM studs match up exactly with the with the openings on the bib rack. So the bib rack, you pull it off the original plate, put the hood on, secure the bib rack here. We'll probably want to put some supports on the bottom of the bib rack, just as far as vertical supports are concerned, since this isn't going to be as secure as the other. But you'll be able to see here, these are the gaskets as of right now that I have put in here, meant to match perfectly the CC3 burn-in board. And I will plug that in here in a second to show you how those fit on there. That's that portion of the setup. Um, let's see here. I think if I go here, this will take us to the actual layout. Okay. Um, this one. Like I said, we've got multiple different variations taking place. Yeah, there we go. All right, so this I've plugged the extender board in here, but just disregarding the extender board, you can see how the CC3 bib rack now secures to the exterior plate. And I'll go ahead and plug a burn-in board in here. And if we get some other drawings from them indicating that these burn-in boards are built differently, then great. I can just modify the cut out of the gasket. So if I go here, well, I'll just, instead of getting a perfect alignment, I'll just drag it over here in place and get an idea. So this has just been, that gasket's been set up to just follow all the contours here when it's plugged. So blind plug, but gasket that is sealing off at all these points to keep the CDA from leaching out. Now, another thing that'll take place that I don't have shown right now in this drawing, but I have I can kind of show you here. Right there. So this cover plate right here. So right now the humidity probe is behind that plate. I have another cover plate that has a hole cut in it, and another spot for a gasket. And what that'll enable is to be able to stick that humidity probe further through. And the reality is I probably need to open up another slot up here as well so we can just get more CDA flowing into this actual cavity. And so I guess the reality is if we're putting this envelope on, we may even just, we may not need that plate. We'll just take these plates off, which you can then stick the humidity probe further in, and then all the CDA will go into that area as well. So that's something we can discuss more. It's not going to change anything right now. And so that is that setup right there. Now, if I pull this, I'm going to pull this bib out real quick and just kind of talk about this extender board. So the extender board right now in its current position is plugged directly to the CC3 the feed-through card. Now, if we're going to be using these extender boards rather than plugging directly through with the board, then we need to replace this gasket right here with the gasket that just has a slit that goes around the extender board. And so you can see here, there's still a good portion of that extender board, so the gasket will be about right there. There's a good portion of this extender board just hanging out in the chamber. Now, I've got this shown on here right now. You can disregard these. But one of the things that I was mentioning earlier is I've got 632 holes, 2 of them at each slot, as well as some holes here. We've got a lot of different places that we can work with to secure some sort of bracket to hold these extender boards. I'm almost envisioning some sort of milled aluminum piece that secures here and here with 632 screws and then goes back and down almost an L, but divided around the extender board, and then you secure some brackets here on the extender board. So I think we've got a lot of different options there that we can work with. And so that's not since we're reusing the rack, we're not making any design changes there. We're going to work with what we have. And so that's something that we can address a little bit later on. But as of right now, this assembly is set up to run as a straight chamber wall out of the box with no hood, and then it is set up to run with a hood with the CC3 bibs inserting directly through the hood and blind plugging into the back wall with some couple more pieces to secure these boards, and another gasket here that can replace these gaskets. It can easily be turned into a situation where you've got the extender board being used. I had the CC3 bib plugged in here earlier to the extender board, and it still stays within the back edge of this bib rack, so there's no concern with the board being too long once it plugs that extender board or anything like that. But that should be about the extent of it all. I've got everything drawn up and just working on getting everything sent out to get quoted at this point. So let me know if there's anything you see that we want to take a second look at.